everyone. We are going to call this meeting to order. This is our meeting of July 24th, 2026. Roll call, please. Ms. Harper.
Ms. Applegate.
Here.
Dr. Echeverria. Here. Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
Ms. Kenworthy. Ms. Millennium.
Here. On behalf of the Board of Education, welcome. I would like to express my appreciation to my colleagues on the board for their attendance today, as well as our district staff for supporting our organizing this retreat. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda as presented in board docs?
I move to approve today's meeting agenda as presented in board docs.
Is there a second? I second. Is there any discussion? Seeing that it has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for today's meeting of July 24th, 2026 as presented in board docs. Roll call, please. Ms. Harper.
Ms. Applegate.
Yes.
Dr. Echeverria. Here. Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
Ms. Kenworthy. Ms. Millennium.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, guys, we are going to hop into our retreat agenda. We have a couple goals today that I just want to highlight. We have a pretty packed agenda, and I really want to focus on our ability to have some real dialogue. I think that's what's going to be really important. We have people in the room that are here to help us. I know that Lindsay and Craig are going to dial in or come in and out as for a couple of these discussions. A quick reminder, this is open to the public, and I have heard that there are folks that may come in and out as well. I just want to ground us in the fact that, like, this is, so I've been on the board for 2 years now, and this is probably some of the most important work that I think I've ever done. So you guys are coming into it hot and fresh, so, like, welcome into that. I also want to say it's nice to see everybody again. I know we've had a little bit of a break, but it's nice to be all together again. I'm excited for today. And so I really want us to focus on the fact that, like, the most important thing is to make sure that the interest of kids in Jeffco is protected. I think that's something I want us to really lean into, is like our job is to focus on what's best for kids. I know that there's gonna be a lot of opportunity for us to have discussions, and when I've been kind of contemplating coming into this meeting, it's like, I know what I like and prefer politically, professionally, and all those things, but like trying to recenter myself on our kids and our students and what's best for them. And I think that's something that's gonna guide me in my thoughts and process today. So I just wanted to share that. I know we have a why we serve on here. I'm gonna take a little bit of privilege and say, I just wanna check in with everybody. I think we've talked about why we serve and why we're here, but if there's anything on your mind or on your heart, I just wanna take a few minutes to ground us, and then we're gonna jump right into the work. So, any thoughts, any reflections? No, we can work. It's good to work. Very good.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think our students deserve the best education we can possibly provide them with the resources we have in hand, and I serve because I want to make sure that happens.
Okay, cool. All right, and thank you for that. So we're gonna jump right in. Our very first thing, so the idea here is that we wanna just do a quick review. I know we've all been in several meetings with Hilltop and with Kimberly and with our own folks, but I really want us to just kind of re-ground, since it's been a hot minute, in what the outcomes and decisions were for the partnership, what the polling results were, and then just kind of a quick discussion of the money and really, like, financially what that means for us as a district and what each of these options means. We're gonna then roll into kind of a break, and then pros and cons of kind of the options before us. And this is really our opportunity to, like, how are we feeling about all these options, and then that's gonna lead to something which is really the goal. Dr. Stein, is there anything you'd like to add before we kick off?
Not at this point, thanks very much.
All right. Matt and Kristen, who is leading us through the partnership discussion, or do you want me to?
Well, Brenna is.
Okay.
I just teased her that you guys are about 20 minutes out of the schedule. So,
Yes. It will only happen once. Enjoy it. Sorry, Brenna. Okay, so if you guys recall, Brenna's gonna come in. She's built some really good slides, as she always does. When the partnership came to us in May, they were really excited. And quick recap, the partnership partnership came together throughout the spring. Community, staff, teachers, families, parents, and really what they presented to us was, hey, there's a need. And they were, in my observation, pretty emphatic about we need to ask for what we need. That is something that has kind of stuck with me as we've gone through. And so what Brenna and Matt, I don't know if you want to tee this up better than I'm going to tee up while Brenna's getting here, is let's remember what we need and how this money, one of the things we hear a lot of is, and we saw it in the polling, is support a lot for 75 million. But from sitting on the CAC for 2 years, there's real capital needs too. And so, we've deferred money for capital for the last 2 years, and deferred maintenance is a scary thing. And we've seen that in our schools. I think we're starting to see just the edges of it. And so I also wanna just re-ground us in, there's a lot of capital needs too that are not the sexy, fun, like new additions and whatnot, but like foundational pieces of our equipment for schools.
Yeah, and I think you all have received a ton of information, and it's hard to keep all that information in your head. So I think our hope today is just to re-ground and provide a high level overview of both just our financial reality, but also our capital needs and the implications of each type of package. If one package was to move forward versus another, what the implications would be if something does or does not pass. We just want everyone to have that same understanding, so that way you have the information you need to engage in a conversation that will help inform your decision making with regards to the MLO. And then we have all the resources in the room today. So we have Hilltop here, we have our bond council here, we have our facilities team, financial team, everyone here can help you answer the questions or clarify anything that you might need clarified. Okay? All right, Brenna.
Good morning,
Ready?
Brenna. Thank you for coming and joining us early.
You bet. Hi, everyone. So just to clarify, I know that the agenda suggested we were gonna revisit the partnership recommendation, then the polling data, then the financials. Do you still want that same order? Do you wanna start with the financials? What's your preference?
So let's ask the group. We've seen this data before. Is it helpful to review it, or should we jump? I mean, I think a quick review of polling results is not bad, but I think the financial overview is kind of the meat.
It is,
Yeah.
although I would like to do the financial needs closer to when we're going to have our discussion about the why, our next part of our meeting. So I think it's not a bad idea to go through, in the order as presented, because it lays the foundation for.
Let's keep the order then, Brenna, but keep in mind, I think we all feel decently comfortable with the first 2 items and looking to see if people are shaking hands. So.
Okay. So in that case, I'm gonna pull up the partnership recommendation deck, which will look familiar. And I think, Matt, we agreed that when it comes to the polling results, you or someone else might be pulling those up. Is that correct?
Yeah, Ryan Winger should be joining us from Magellan.
Okay.
To all of them, Ryan.
When is he joining?
He probably is not joining for a few minutes because we're.
They're actually not joining until 11:15.
11:15. Okay, that's right.
Okay, well,
All right. I'm gonna share screen. I've tried a couple times to download this file to make it easier to see, but it's not quite working. So it's a little bit small. Can you guys see that all right?
Yeah, actually we can.
Okay, great. So this is the same presentation that the partnership gave back in May. It's still very much available on board docs. And I think we just wanted to make sure folks had a moment to glance back over who they are and what they represent. So I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on it, but I think where I am right now, which I think is like slide 5, is just a reminder that the group had parents, staff, and some residents, including 10 folks who were in all 3 groups. They went through some material that they had digested and understood from us, which I was so impressed with, by the way, around what's the what are the financial challenges in the district and what are some of the strategic challenges that they thought we needed to solve, both in the general operating space and in the capital space. They did a nice deep dive, and one of the areas that we've heard from our public is sometimes a question around how come you don't have plenty of money from selling the school buildings? And so they had a couple presentations from Jeff and team, and they digested all of that and put some of it up here around the existing properties for sale and how much total money we might bring in from those remaining properties. And the reality that none of them are selling for a dollar amount that will make much of a dent in our capital needs, or at least provide much money for our capital needs. They went through their values, which I know the whole group spent some time on early on, and then their recommendation. So they recommended a combined $135 million request, consisting of a $75 million general purpose levy override for compensation and career and technical education, and then a special purpose mill levy of $60 million annually in an ongoing manner to help maintain our schools. They went on to then share some recommended ballot language. This is the language that we used in the second poll. You can see the uses there in bright yellow. Again, excuse me, attracting and keeping high quality staff by raising salaries and staffing levels closer to market average, and then providing students with the instruction skills and hands-on learning necessary for success in college and workplace of this word. That's their language. And then when it came to the special purpose mill levy, they identified some purposes as a group that they thought were compelling. The climate controlled spaces, asbestos abatement, clean and safe drinking water, safety investments, etc.
And Brenda, just to confirm, they had it in two separate ballot initiatives, right? I see a 1 and a 2.
No, ma'am, it is actually combined, but you still number them. When they're separate, each of them is an A and a B, so it would be 5A,
Okay.
5B.
Thank you for that clarification.
But even in the combined, you still separate them out, because it's two different parts of statute that you're referencing.
Understood. Thank you for that.
So, one of the graphics that they found compelling, and I'm so impressed, Devin even kind of reworked himself, is the one on the screen here, which really speaks to the fact that our combined general purpose mill levy and special purpose levy, we have no special purpose levies yet, is significantly below the Front Range average. And this kind of idea of how, and the numbers are so small, I'll just read them to you real quick. Our combined 13,600 as compared to 15,400, that's about a little more than a 15%, I just did the math in my head, differential. And so, operating at a 12 to 15% differential below funding makes it really difficult to get closer to average on salaries for staff. So, here's their recommended budget of sorts in a pie chart around the general purpose MLO. And they talked about how spending it primarily on compensation is a really important way to address our current challenges. And then also that CTE was both important and demonstrating success with our students and clearly popular in the community. So they were a fan of that, having heard quite a bit from Heather Waldron. And then the special purpose mill levy of $60 million. They borrowed a bit of information from one of our budget presentations, and they pointed out that if the 60 million came in and we combined it with a transfer of about 15, as well as some reasonable estimate of annual sales of property, we'll probably be selling properties for the next 2 to 3 years. We could be pulling in close to 88 million into our capital funds. And that would provide for increased investment in facility improvements, potential replacement construction, technology, and other additional improvements. And so this was kind of something they borrowed from us that helped explain how, while 60 million didn't meet the full need, in the next several years, we're combining it with some other sources to get closer to the full need. And I think you guys probably remember the full need approximates about 108 million annually in today's dollars. So that's why I think folks were trying to get that annual spend as close as possible to average annual need. They went on to further summarize some of the potential positive impacts and align their recommendation to next steps and policies. I'm gonna pause there. Any questions?
No, not seeing any here, Brennan.
All right, you guys are on it this morning. I love it. All right, I'm gonna toggle over, and then Matt, do you want to pull up the polling results, or do you want me to dive right into finance, or?
I think I reached out to Ryan, I haven't heard back from him yet, so I think we can move forward with the financials.
Yeah. And I did ping Lindsay. I know Craig's gonna call in, but I said it might be helpful for Lindsay to join the pros and cons discussion.
Yeah.
Great. Super. So this presentation we put together, my team and I, to really focus on 4 things. As we understood sort of the request, is a financial analysis and summary or forecast, if you will, for 4 different scenarios. The first one is what happens if neither of the 2 contemplated mill levies are approved. The second is what if voters only approve and you see the number 73 here instead of 75. I am gonna go into greater detail on that in just a moment. So if you have a question mark in your head about why is that different, I will answer that question. The third would be what if we only pass the 60 million special purpose but no general purpose. And the fourth is what if we pass both as a combined or as separate measures, doesn't really matter, for a net financial gain or investment in Jeffco, including our charters, of 133 million. I've linked a couple things to the right that we're going to be referring to. So we're going to start with that scenario of the no new mill levies. This is straight from your adopted budget back in June, which feels like about 2 years ago. This table summarizes just the general fund and the capital reserve fund. In terms of the current year, the current fiscal year, 26-27, we expect the general fund to begin with a fund balance of around 123 million, bring in 977, spend or transfer out 991, and then use approximately 13. That would bring us down to about 110 at the end of this year, of which 80 million is spendable. And I speak to spendable because the 30 million difference there, the Tabor's, you can't touch it. It's not really a resource to the district. And so as we're thinking about what's actually available for future years or a rainy day or an emergency need, it's really not the 110, it's 80. And I think you noticed that Tabor is held in many funds, not just the general fund, that's part of the law. And so when we also look at our capital reserve fund, in terms of what the budget anticipated, we would begin the year, this current year, I see that Kim is on, do you guys want me to let Kim in? Sorry.
Kim's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna
yeah, I got
bring her
it.
in.
Thanks.
Okay. So our capital reserve fund would begin with about 74 million in beginning fund balance. The 31 million in anticipated revenue is really three things. One is a transfer from the general fund, two is sale proceeds, and three is interest and fees in lieu. Fees in lieu are de minimis, but there's still a little bit of interest income to that fund. Against total expenditures of 64 for a net use of fund balance of 33 million. The ending fund balance would be about 41, and of which 39 is spendable. So again, there's a little bit of Tabor reserve held in that fund. That's the difference between the 41 and the 39. 39 million at the end of this year will be available for any subsequent years. So this is the budget you adopted. So in the scenario that no new mill levy passes, voila, your adopted budget is gonna govern the road, so to speak, and be our best guess of what will happen. I'm gonna keep going. There's a few more ways to kind of talk about this, but by all means jump in. On my screen, you all are tiny, and so I
We'll let you know, Brenna. We'll wave wildly if we're speaking. Yeah.
I need like, a big old wave.
We'll yell.
Okay, so based on what I just showed you and taking it one more year into the future, so we were just talking only about the current year. This graph is just looking at the ending spendable fund balance after one more year. So that one additional year would be 27-28. So over here on the right, you've got two lines here. The blue line, which is on the top, is the general fund, ending fund balance for the 3 years contemplated, because we also looked back 1 year. And then the orange line is capital reserve fund. And so in this way, you can see that after the current year, moving through next year, if no new mills pass, the spendable fund balances in those two funds reach 62 million in the general fund and 9 million in the capital reserve fund.
But Brenna,
And so,
can I ask
Yes.
a question? I also want to be clear, that assumes that we don't make any additional cuts or adjust the
Correct.
budget next year, right? So we would have, this is not for certain. This is if we carry on the current trajectory. We have an ability and an authority here to change that trajectory, regardless of what happens in November. Okay. Thank
Correct. And so, the board has asked me in the past, what do I think potentially an ideal balance would be of spendable reserves, meaning reserves that the organization could deploy. And I've estimated that at about 10% of our annual spend. That gives us some cushion and flexibility to confront things like threats on our federal funds and or emergency events, etc. And so 10% in the general fund would actually be 105 million. So you can see that kind of even at the end of last fiscal year, which is this first set of values, the general fund is already below that benchmark that in general I think is appropriate.
Hey, Brenna, on the previous slide, I thought it said we were at 130 million, not 93 million. Help me.
Yep. So when we talk about spendable, we were at
Got it.
123, but that includes Tabor.
Got it.
And so reserves and excluding Tabor were 93, so that's about 30 million less than the 123.
Can you clarify if the 105 million is inclusive of the Tabor as well?
No, ma'am, that is a target for spendable reserves. Spendable reserves will always exclude Tabor, meaning you can actually do something with them.
So 135?
Yeah, 135,
Okay.
140.
Okay, thank you.
That. And then I think that the line on here, we spend a lot of time on the general fund, but the line on here that gives me the greatest pause is actually the capital reserve fund. Because there's just about nothing we can do with 9 million when the capital reserve fund is spending down its reserves, you know, to the tune of about 30 million a year. And even with that spend down, the capital, you know, our capital investments are only at about 60% of what they should be. So it's really on the capital side of the house that we both run out of savings and we have, you know, pretty significantly insufficient incoming sources to maintain our facilities. So again, a question we got, which is, you know, well, what actually happens in the current year if no new mill levies are approved? The technical answer is sort of nothing. You know, the district will continue to operate under the board approved budget. You approved a budget that authorizes us to use reserves. We would not recommend or attempt necessarily to make any reductions or adjustments mid-year, given that the board had already authorized this level of spending. One note, my little asterisk right here, while the adopted budget did anticipate using about 13 million, the balance of this presentation, I'm rounding that to about 15, and I think that's still probably conservative, given the trending enrollment we're already seeing in Enroll Jeffco, and given the reality that every year for the past 3, actuals have come in higher than our budget estimate each year in the inflation environment we're in. So again, answer is we keep on keeping on. What happens in 28? And so Michelle, this starts to get to your question about would we just let things sort of go? And the answer is no. Your June resolution identified that we would commence a planning process so that by 27-28 we could try and reach a balanced budget. Now in 27-28 to reach a balanced budget, we need at least 18 million in reductions. That's higher than 13 simply because of the multi-year forecast. I have a separate slide that shows that forecast so you can orient to that. But I think it's important to know that the problem we're solving for, if this doesn't pass, is not just this year's deficit, it's growing. So the problem we need to solve for is a little bigger than this year's deficit. And the things that your resolution identified that we would explore is reductions kind of across the board to potentially salaries, potentially benefits, potentially staffing, services in general, and then you mentioned in the resolution that we might look at school consolidation as a mechanism to help us reduce salaries, benefits, staffing, and services. And so for capital, there's not a ton of optionality here. On this slide, I'm just basically suggesting that in addition to deferring 44 million, which we are already doing, we would attempt to solve for the mismatch of sources and uses in capital by deferring an additional 35 million, bringing total deferrals to 79 million, meaning $79 million worth of ongoing improvements would not be completed. Questions?
I don't think any questions. Based on the size, it's everyone's understanding.
So taking those two numbers together, 18 million, 35 million, the planning process would look to identify 53 million in reductions. You know, just to think for a moment about how does that compare to past efforts the district has gone through. When we closed 15 elementary schools, we were able to identify 20 million in recurring savings, both in school budgets and in departmental budgets. When we went through the full BRB process, which was looking under every rock and every stone and doing everything possible we identified about 42 million in recurring savings. For us to, in the current year, identify another 53 million in reductions, heavily focused in capital, but that would be severe. Questions?
So if the annual need for capital is 108 million, is the 79 million deferral coming from that 108?
Yeah, so it's basically, whereas we should spend 108, we are unable to spend 79. So instead we're spending, just under 30, which again is, it's under 30%, and Jeff will speak more to this. This is why I have this little note, the other presentation. Jeff is better equipped to help articulate what does it look like when we get down to that level of spending. What are we sacrificing? And unfortunately, I think the punchline is a little bit around, we're likely sacrificing the types of improvements that make our buildings habitable by both students and staff. And so we are likely to increase the number of missed days of instruction.
Can I add something here, Brenna, or maybe ask a question and then a point? And maybe you're gonna talk about this in the other presentation. I know you've shown us the chart of like, that 108 million is an average that includes when we've done the 2018 capital work. And then you kind of have this like dotted line that shows us like kind of our spend. Is that in your current coming presentation?
That particular graphic isn't, but we can
Talk about that,
pull
okay.
up references. Yeah, we reference the average.
Okay, perfect. Because we don't spend 108 every year, but it'd be great if we could. Okay. The other thing I wanna add is we have been grieved by our staff and teachers for buildings not being up to speed. So when we think about the success of our teachers and students, it's not just their salaries. This matters too.
This is our learning environment. This is where our kids are showing up. This is where our teachers are trying to do instruction. So if they have classrooms that are experiencing physical plant issues, like a leak or something, that is gonna impact student focus and instruction. If the climate can't be controlled, that's gonna impact instruction, and the work environment for our staff. And so this does matter, has huge impact on what we offer day-to-day for education.
I think to that point, Jeff's presentation has incorporated some illustrations of some real events that have happened from a facility perspective.
Thank you, Brennan. Please carry on.
So then this is the final slide in this section of summary about what happens if we don't get either. And it really just repeats some of what you just heard, and it lines it up alongside of our forecast for last year. We are still finalizing and closing the books on last year, so I still don't know exactly how much of general fund reserves we will have spent. This is just the general fund. But I think it's close to 51, maybe 52 million that we will have spent out of general fund reserves last year. And again, this just shows you over a pattern of years, if we make no substantive changes, what happens. There's really two things I want to make sure you know, because we didn't spend quite as much time talking about them in the budget presentations in May and June. And these are FY28 concerns that I've listed on the right. The first FY28 concern is that top line revenue, so total all-in revenue inclusive of everything we get, total program, interest income, fees, every source of revenue combined is a net decline in FY28. This would be a second year in a row of a net decline. Even with applying and computing the expected inflationary increases to per pupil. So we always get the question from our unions, you must not be incorporating the per student increases, the 2.5–3% per student increases. Yes, we are. we absolutely have our per student revenue increasing, and yet, because our fund account is decreasing faster, the total revenue, is going down on a dollar basis. So in a scenario such as this, which is both the current year and next year, the expense assumptions you're looking at reflect, 0 COLA increases. So as you know, this year we gave steps, and that was it. We did not increase the employer's contribution to any of the benefits plans. That same assumption carries into next year. So that would be 2 years in a row of no cost of living increases to any of our salary scales. Our returning employees would get a step-for-step equivalent, but incoming employees would be hired into salary scales that have lost ground against both inflation and our neighbors. So that FY28 year, though we didn't spend a ton of time talking about it this spring, is a bummer, for sure.
That's such a kind way to summarize that, the bummer. This makes me nauseous. Looking at this makes me nauseous. And I appreciate the straightforward facts that are presented here. I think it's really important for us to, see the crisis, the fiscal crisis that we're in. I also know that the value of understanding this in its context, that this is with absolutely no changes, no local increase from mill levy overrides, and no state level changes to education funding formulas. There's multiple things on the ballot this year that could impact what these numbers look like after November, which is my even fervent hope that there's multiple things that pass. But this is the stripped away without any of the hope or expectation that anything is going to change. And I think it's really important to have clarity. So thank you for providing this. All right. So the next 3 parts are easier and less gruesome. We started with the worst thing. Ate our vegetables first. All right. So what happens if we pass just the general purpose? And this is the slide I briefly alluded to at the beginning, where I explained why has the dollar estimate changed. So as you know, back in the spring, the partnership recommended we max out our override by collecting an estimated 75 million. They were working from an estimate that my team and I provided them, but that estimate was originally generated back in November of last year. A couple things have happened. One, even in October, November of last year, our enrollment data was just coming in, so to speak. And this past year's enrollment was lower than we budgeted. And then, as I mentioned, what we're seeing in enrolled Jeffco right now for the school year about to start is also lower than what we budgeted. We budgeted a decline of around 1,100 students. We're seeing something closer to 1,400 student decline for the current year compared to last year. And so that shrinks total program. And therefore, that this collection is simply a percentage of total program. The combined maximum collection is a percentage of total program. And when, the total program shrinks, therefore the maximum collection shrinks a little bit. But, this green part of the graph, so on the graph on the right, you see 3 years worth of just the MLO collections, assuming that we max it out. The green part does grow a tiny bit with inflation. That's related to the 2018 mill levy override that grows with inflation. And as I mentioned, all of our forecasts assume state supplied estimates of inflation that would increase PPR and that would therefore, adjust total program, et cetera. But right here you see that whereas we expect to collect about 157 in our existing mills, our existing overrides in the current year, the following year would be up to 158. And that kind of further squeezes how much we might collect in this new mill levy override. So the punchline here is not a huge dollar amount, but nonetheless, the current estimate is that our first year of collections
would be 73 million, not 75. And that's not an error, that is our best forecast. And when you certify the language, we need to supply our best forecast. It needs to be as accurate as possible for our taxpayers. And in a subsequent year, it's actually gonna drop slightly. So down to 72 before hopefully it starts to trend up a little bit. Any questions about that?
For the declining enrollment, the 1,400 estimate, is that inclusive of our charter schools or not?
It is inclusive, but I think it's important to note that our charter schools are not experiencing declining enrollment. So the full 1,400 drop for district-wide is 100% a drop in district-run schools only.
Thank you.
Just a quick note about timing, because as we think about, what happens if this passes, it's important to think about when does it actually show up. So if voters approve in November, you all would certify your mills in December. You are a taxing authority, and the county tax office would start to collect those in 2027. They send us our first ACH of any substance in March of 27, and continue to send us collections through about August. So again, you know this about our finances in general, both the local share of total program and all of our MLOs and all of our levies, they're collected in this March to August timeframe. And since they represent over half of all of our revenue, it does create this cash flow pinch for the district, which you'll hear some more about in some of our upcoming presentations, and you heard some of that in our proposed budget presentation. I just wanted to mention that if it passes in November, we will start collecting in this fiscal year. But the first full year where we can plan and budget to expend these amounts will be the 27-28 fiscal year, meaning we can plan in advance, know that we have them, promise ways to use them, etc.
And I wanna add here, that is actually our biggest opportunity to build fund balance. Because
Restore.
sorry, thank you, Jenna. Because that money will be coming in and not necessarily committed. So I just wanna, now, we will have pressure to use it, because everybody also knows that money's coming in, but I just want us to be real clear, like, to that fund balance discussion, that is like one of our best opportunities, right, Brenna?
It's sort of a once in a 10 to 15 year horizon opportunity.
It's rare. Thank you. Sorry.
Correct.
You know you can always correct me if I say it wrong, but I just wanted to.
What's the estimated amount that would be replenishing?
Do you know, Brenna, how much we would bring in that like half year-ish?
We would almost get the full amount. So the 75, so let me just go to the budget real quick here. Or the 73, excuse me. The 73, so really the district only keeps about 98%. The charter share is growing a little bit, in part because Free Horizon is now a charter. We keep 88%, charter share is 12%, and 88% of 73 is gonna be, let's say, 60 something. And that would be available to first offset your deficit. So again, I think your deficit's gonna be about 15 million or more. And we can describe that deficit perhaps as compensation increases that we've already approved and provided. Because again, your ballot language references two uses, most likely. One is compensation increases and the other is CTE. So we need to characterize the current year spend as compensation increases, which is both true and easy to demonstrate. So first we do that, and then we have an additional amount. So it would be 39 plus a little bit more that would actually accrue to the fund balance. So it'd be just under 50. hopefully, which incidentally, matches, almost what we used last year. So we might be able to restore, what was spent in the prior year, in the current year.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's an important point.
But that, of course, doesn't restore the prior year.
Right, no doubt, but it is a great step towards getting us.
So then the
Closer.
remaining would be going to the CTE, is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, so if you think about,
So going forward, it would, but in the current year, we would not attempt to mid-year start spending any of the CTE money.
so if you think about it, I mean, if you look at that pie, that's what it would go to.
Yeah.
But the comp, since we pre-spent some of that would still go, the rest of it would kind of just exist.
Great, and so again, what you see in this graph, we tried to color two versions of green. That's kind of your 75% on comp, some of which was awarded prior to the ballot and some which could be awarded in the future. The orange for CTE and the pink or magenta for charter. Okay, keep going. So revisiting this same table, this really answers your question about how much could potentially restore fund balance. So that's where this 50 is coming back in if this general purpose passes. But just a quick reminder, it doesn't magically solve for next year. Two things are gonna happen, sorry. This year's gonna get a little bit worse due to enrollment, and next year already had a revenue decline. So it's, we would have to make additional changes in order, some small changes in order to bridge that if we spend all of the MLO on comp increases. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
When you say changes, can you clarify what you mean by changes that we need to make or implement?
Reductions.
Thank you.
But if we only pass the general purpose MLO and we're in a pickle when it comes to our capital spending, the board, and I never like to necessarily say it's for sure, but you might consider or opt to increase the transfer to capital, which again becomes something to solve for. So this picture assumes you don't increase the transfer to capital, but if you don't do that, then we're sort of juggling that. Okay, wait, how severe is our capital situation becoming? How quickly? So does that make sense? If you only pass this one MLO, you might be in a situation where you either need to make additional cuts or changes, or you might be asking for scenarios to increase that transfer so that we can complete a minimum level of capital improvements. All right?
Just to clarify, if we pass the general MLO, are we only permitted to spend it on salaries, or am I understanding you correctly when you're saying that we could actually take some of that revenue and replenish our reserves? We can do that, legally speaking?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Although that presumes there's not guardrails in the MLO language that would restrict it that way.
But the
So
guardrails
the,
still would apply to the revenue coming in, and we would still have the general fund.
Right, in which case then we still have to consider the perception of,
That's
you got these guardrails here, but then you
But you did the
then
second
move
fund.
money elsewhere. So
Yes. You guys are nailing
well, I think the same argument you're using to use any of this collection towards previously provided comp increases. This past year's budget was balanced until we provided comp increases. So using 51 million of your reserves last year, was a direct result of providing comp increases over time that didn't match our revenue. So it's the same logic applies. And then Kim will tell you that there's a phrase on the draft ballot, and it's on pretty much every school district's ballot, that says, and uses consistent with, the statute. And the statute, of course, provides no limitation on what you can do with MLO dollars. So it's both consistent with the two uses articulated, to restore the fund balance that was deployed towards comp increases, as well as to offset the current year's use of fund balance that was deployed towards comp increases. And you have the technical language of the ballot.
Right.
Just whispering. Am I saying
Sorry.
something wrong?
No, you're doing good. You're doing great. We're talking about agenda, but I think you're doing, continue on, Brenna, you're doing wonderful.
Okay, finally, coming back to capital, if we only pass the general purpose, we still have a capital issue, and here I've summed up 44 and approximately 35 to get to 79 million. That's very similar to the number that we spoke of earlier about combined deferral. So meaning about 80 million of stuff that should happen will not be happening. Okay. So what happens if we only pass the special purpose levy? This gets a little bit easier and quicker. We pull in about 60, of which the charter share is about 7 million, and the district share is 53. So just a parenthetical here, I think notions of charter share, we didn't spend as much time with the partnership on that. I think they showed a forecast that's a little bit simplified, about 60 million coming in and being available just to the district. It's not quite true. 53 will be available to the district and show up in our capital expenditures. Okay?
Yep.
And then, but if we only do special purpose and we don't do general purpose, we still have to solve for 18 million, cutting salaries, benefits, positions, and or other services. Questions here? And thank you guys, because you already gave us a little bit of a roadmap for how to do this in your June 11th authorization to use fund balance. Okay. Finally, again, this is just revisiting that same slide of sorts where the partnership had recommended both, to remind us of that. This is what it looks like for both, but with the updated figure for the general purpose. We have two budgets. These budgets are pie charts, my favorite kind of budget. And I will just note, what's the virtue of a pie chart budget instead of a dollar budget? Back in 2018, when Jeffco passed its general purpose mill levy override, all of the materials provided were pie chart budgets. And what that does is it means that you can continue to honor a promise to voters with clarity as a dollar amount changes over time. And so specifically for our general purpose mill levy, where we think the dollar amount will actually go down in our second year of collections, a pie chart budget is super important. Because when you orient too tightly around a specific dollar amount, people expect you to demonstrate that money coming in and going back out, as opposed to an unknown amount of money coming in and going back out, but that's allocated according to a set of promises. So in this case for both levies, we're going to be consistent and really use our pie charts to talk about how each year of collection, we're going to distribute it in this way according to this plan. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But here's the dollar budget. If the first year collection is 133, This thing makes me nervous, but I'm happy to give it to you guys. But I think in terms of our marketing materials and voters, we need to always be clear about what's an illustration of what could be dollar amounts versus what's our actual promise. Okay. And that's it.
Okay, well, now it's time for capital, I think.
Well.
Brenda, thank you so much, for taking the time to put this together. It's, this is the question that not only the board asks, but a lot of people have asked me is, well, what happens if we don't? And, it's very helpful to have that clarity, so I really appreciate it.
Do that, and I'm gonna hang out in case I can be a resource, to anyone in our forthcoming presentations, but I think with that, we're gonna either go straight to polling or to capital.
Yeah,
I'm not
we're gonna
sure.
go to capital.
Oh.
Kristen, should we use that computer for
Yeah, you can just plug in.
Plug in. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Alright, just a transition pause.
Also, if anybody needs a snack, we do have, if you need a refuel before the next.
We're back. Okay. Well, it's nice to see y'all. Thanks for giving us a little bit of time to talk through really what this could mean as it relates to capital impact in our schools and across our facilities. I think the big red flag was what you just saw around what our capital reserve fund could look like at the end of fiscal year 28, where we only have $9 million roughly left to fund all the capital things that we need in our facilities. And so Brenda went through most of this, but just to recap, we've invested about $108 million annually over the past, I want to say 14 years or so in our facilities. And there's an industry benchmark that about 110 annually is needed, and that's probably a bit on the low end of what is needed for our facilities. And then when annual investment falls below that, where maintenance grows and the risks increase. And so what we're talking about are things like failing mechanical systems. This is cooling season. Mark can 20 stories already, dealing with cooling season right now. Aging roofs, plumbing upgrades, electrical infrastructure, building safety systems, and just other critical facility needs that we have. And so, deferred maintenance doesn't disappear. Every year projects are deferred, and we're deferring things right now. We've deferred the last couple years. Systems continue to age, emergency repairs increase, and replacement costs rise, the backlog grows. And more importantly, and I think you were starting to touch on this a minute ago, is that the impacts are real and they're felt in our schools. Our students, learning disruptions and lost instructional time. We're going to go through a couple of case studies and actual examples where this has happened. You mentioned staff, taking care of our staff. When we're looking at the general MLO for salary increases, we're also talking about taking care of our staff through maintaining the facilities and providing great learning environments. So that can lead to operational interruptions, substandard working conditions, and just unhappy employees. You get the emails when things don't work. We get them too. So it's real. The impact is real. And then taxpayers. When we defer things, ultimately, it costs more over time to fix them and address them. So I wanted to go through a couple three case studies just to share around the real cost of deferred maintenance. So this first one, a school had an HVAC system beyond its end of its useful life. It needed replacement, but we didn't have the funding to do it. So we deferred over multiple years. The system required frequent emergency repairs. Classrooms experienced temperature issues. Staff spent time responding to outages. This is where we are today. The system still needs to be replaced, ultimately. But we paid for years of repairs, in addition to what that future replacement cost will be, while students and staff experienced unnecessary disruptions along the way. This real example resulted in the first 2 days of school last year being canceled because the cooling system didn't work. So that's an unfortunate but a real situation that occurred. And when we've been talking about instructional impact and lost instructional time, this is one of those specific examples of when that occurred.
So the students in that school lost 2 days of instruction.
First 2 days of school, yep. This is an interesting one too.
I remember this one.
Oh, yeah, see, maybe bringing back some memories. Sorry about that. Sorry if I'm coming back to you with this. This one and one more, and then we'll move on.
Should bring a trauma informed.
Yeah, I should give you a warning. A water main line feeding the school has reached its end of its useful life. And multiple repairs have been made, requiring excavation and removal of concrete to repair a minimal leaking section. So we have a large section of pipe that's beyond its useful age. It's leaking in multiple areas. So we have to go in each time, cut through concrete, fix the line, pour new concrete, repair it, and it happens again because we don't have enough money and resources to fix the whole thing. So you get that. When this happens though, when a water main is broken, goes down, it causes a disruption. We bring in potable water, hand washing stations, and other support measures to the site. And regardless of the best efforts to ensure that things continue, it still causes a disruption. That's the reality.
So basically, it sounds like this building did not have running water for a period of time.
For a period of time.
Can I add?
Yeah, please.
I don't know if you've had plumbing issues in your own home, but there's associated smells that come with it that can be incredibly distracting for staff.
Yeah, this was the water main, and that might be the other part of plumbing, but that has caused some serious disruptions in our schools as well.
And I would assume there's costs to the natural environment as well, right?
There could be, yeah, depending on the situation, sure. And this is an example of aging concrete work at the main entrance of the middle school that was failing and needed replacement. The concrete was repeatedly repaired to simply address the tripping hazard, but over time, because it couldn't be done, ultimately how we needed to do it. Moisture intrusion worsened, resulting in a sinking front walkway and insufficient ADA access. The deferred replacement ultimately resulted in shifting concrete and prevented the doors from operating correctly. And this is a good example of the ripple effect of some of these things. Sometimes they're not just standalone. A leaking roof, as you know, gets inside the building and causes all kinds of maintenance issues and costs in other areas as well. So, didn't mean to PTSD you on these issues, but this is real, and this is what's happening in our schools now, and what will continue to happen more and more frequently the more that we defer. That's just the reality of where we are. So I did want to mention, like, what are some of the things, what are some of the priority deferred maintenance items that kind of are on our radar right now? The first one is an R22 refrigerant issue that we have. The EPA has phased out the use of R22 refrigerant in certain components, cooling components, and you can't get R22 refrigerant right now unless it's reclaimed. So we've been doing that for a while, but after the year 2030, you won't be able to get it at all. So what that means is, if you have equipment running R22 refrigerant after 2030, it might run. As soon as it breaks, you can't fix it. So we're getting ahead of that, because that's just a risk we can't take. We can't afford to have a school that's air conditioning unit is working, breaks, and we have to upgrade the whole system. So we're working on replacing the equipment that still rely on R22 refrigerant. It's equipment on 96 school buildings that need to be replaced. And this is chillers and rooftop units? Yes. Okay, perfect. So the equipment varies, but the impact is pretty wide. And other kinds of refrigerants are following suit. What was the R40? R142 is going to be next, and we have some equipment running on that. Not quite. What's that? In our cooling systems.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry. This is all around our cooling systems and the risk of if they stop working.
Yes.
So that's something right now that we're planning for, that we're working on, that we just have to do, and that's going to take resources to do these things. And then just above and beyond the R22 refrigerant issue, just cooling systems in general. Air handling units, rooftop units, and chillers that are beyond the service life. So we're always looking at that, working on that, and trying to manage as best we can and prioritize what needs to be addressed next. But that's a big one as well. Plumbing deficiencies, talked about that in case studies as well. We have sewer and water main lines beyond service life. Code compliance, life safety. We have elevators that need to be upgraded, that when they break, it's incredibly hard to get replacement parts and to get elevators back up and running. So you can imagine the impact that that's having on some of our students who rely on that. Roofing systems, replacement of roofs, and we do large roofs in sections, so it could be replacement of the entire roof or sections that are beyond their service life. We all know the impact that water intrusion has in our schools, and then safety and security upgrades in general, replacement and upgrades of aging security infrastructure. So again, this isn't everything, but these are some of the things that we're focusing very closely on right now.
And if I can add 1 second, and I know that Janine and Peter, when the CAC meets, Mark and Jeff, basically their team builds out like all these things for the next maybe 5 to 10 years, right? You guys have it listed out. So it's there, if you ever wanna see it, they have it. And it's kind of staggering when you start to add up the dollars next to each of those line items. That was one of my big, like, oh my gosh, when I first went to the CAC was like, these guys know it. It's just literally how are we pitching every penny to get like the most need down, and it's kind of scary.
And determining what's the priority with the funding.
Within all that.
Yeah, and I'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
No, thanks. I did want to point out one one thing. You have proposed ballot language that came from the recommendation of the partnership to you. There's a couple items on there around asbestos mitigation and safe drinking water that you're not seeing on our priority list. Because I just want to be really clear that those things are important and we're doing those things. We have an asbestos mitigation plan, but we aren't planning on going in and just removing sections and sections and sections of asbestos in our schools. We're going to stick to our plan and continue doing that. So I just don't want that to be confusing, that it's called out as a specific item, and this is just potential language, that it's something more than that. Same thing with safe drinking water. We have complied to the act that was passed a handful of years ago. Our data is available on CDPHE's website around all the efforts that we've made to be in compliance, and we're starting to get back to our annual just 20% rotation of schools of testing annually. We did that prior to that act, just as a proactive measure. We're working through the compliance, have met the compliance of the act, and now we're going back to that just proactive testing annually. But I just want to call that out too, that there isn't a big plan or push to do anything more than kind of what we're doing already with that. It costs dollars, it's real, but when you see that called out, there might be an interpretation that it means something more than that. So I just want to point that out to the board. So pictures, if you didn't get these in your email already, when you got the emails previously, Mark's just going to talk through, these are what some of these things actually look like when we're telling the story, but what does it mean, what does it look like, what does it feel like? And it also adds to kind of what the scope can be sometimes when you actually see what we're talking about.
So, kind of a story behind every picture here, and I'll be brief with it, but the unfortunate fact that I realized when we started putting this together is these pictures weren't hard to find. I mean, we were flooded with, here's an example, here's an example, here's an example. And so what I've tried to do here is give a representation of different systems that we've experienced here in recent months and years. Kind of starting upper left, this is an example of the water main feeding a school. This is a different school. This happens frequently, but you can see where the saw cutting of the concrete was required. There's vacuum hose there to remove the flooding water. A repair was made, concrete was repoured. Ironically, the repair, in terms of labor, was probably 20% of the total overall cost. That would have been to replace the whole line, but we're limited budgetarily. Second picture on the top row there is a rooftop unit. That's those mechanical cooling equipment that we run into. This is a new one going in, but what I really wanted to illustrate here is some of the work that is compounded and tied into those projects. This is an example. You can see this section right here. The curbing on these have to be extended when we put them in, so it ties in a roofing project with a mechanical project. So good example right now, we have a roof on the South Area Elementary School that has been in desperate need of replacement for as long as anyone can remember. It has been cost prohibitive because it needs modifications, it needs mechanical systems. So this year we're putting mechanical systems on it, next year we're going to replace the roof. But that's just kind of that compounding effect, how everything plays off each other. The middle picture here, this is our Conifer High School cistern water storage facility. This provides domestic water to Conifer High School, West Jefferson Elementary School. This tank has been rusting out, it has been leaking. We considered at the start of last year cutting it in half and re-welding it together just to keep it going. Again, a project that we put so much money into over the years is finally coming to fruition, and we are getting this being replaced as we speak. Roofing systems. This is a Central Area High School, just a folded plate EPDM roof that has a propensity to hold water and leak. It has been in need of replacement for quite some time. Originally original architecture to the building. Again, kind of how these issues compound, this has been patched and repatched over the years. Recently created a leak into that's actually the cafeteria below that section of roofing that dislodged some asbestos, some blown-on asbestos. So it created an immediate need, an urgent need to address that issue. Down below, again, recently one of our central area high schools, just a common thing that we have, water supply lines fail. This is an eye wash station that pipe burst in the ceiling, flooded multiple levels of the school, and required emergency response. Example of just some of our emergency response equipment. This is a fire annunciator panel, part of a larger project to update the entire infrastructure of that school. I think the one thing that I want to say there is it's not always a failure that causes the need for replacement. Sometimes it's code compliance. Sometimes the code gets updated and now you are mandated to take care of that. And we're facing that with some of our fire jurisdictions right now on a couple of different levels.
When that happens, that kind of takes away some discretion in terms of how you manage the budget too.
It does.
Yeah, you
That's
have
right.
mandated
Yes.
change, then all of a sudden something else.
That comes with the cost.
pressing,
That's right.
but is it mandated?
Your priorities shift.
They can shut the school down.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
They wish they could
They
shut
will.
the school down.
And
And I mean, above and beyond that, it's furniture, it's
And I think that's, and I appreciate you calling that out. I think that's a theme of all of this, is you hear like, well, it only would have cost 20% more to replace the whole line. But when you're really scraping to do as many critical projects as you can, you have to make those tough decisions. And then when something like that comes your way that you're required to do, you can't do something. It's really complicated to do it all and to do it all exactly how you want to do every single time. I think this speaks pretty well to that.
The next picture actually shocked me. This one right here. This is underground electrical conduit that we discovered, we unearthed during another project, and it's indicative of what is living underneath sidewalks and the service needs. You can see it's rusted through, obviously prone to moisture intrusion. These are the types of things that we like to see.
I personally worked on an apartment explosion.
Yes, as a result.
That was caused by underground conduit.
That scares me.
Yeah.
So then that becomes
Terrifying.
That becomes an additional cost on another project because I'm not going to put that back. I'm not. This was one of our case studies. This is that sidewalk that we referred to at a middle school. This became an urgent concern for the principal, the entire student population, because that concrete had heaved to the point that the front doors wouldn't latch, and therefore we lost our capability for secured buildings. We had to then dedicate staff, basically full-time all day long, to pull the door shut, pull the door shut, pull the door shut. Potentially disruptive. Just trying to round it out with all of the different systems that we look at. This is a parking lot at one of our high schools. When we can, we like to go in, we scrape, we scarify, we recoat these parking lots on a maintenance schedule. That's fantastic because that parking lot will last a lifetime if we're able to keep up on that. When you are not, the moisture intrusion becomes a problem, and the soil below the asphalt becomes wet, and now we're doing a complete tear out and replace at a higher cost. So, those are just some of the examples. Like I said, we could talk for days.
Thanks, Mark. I think it's important. I think the visuals are helpful too, just to see, the scale of what we're talking about and what the impact actually looks like in our schools and on our sites. So I did want to kind of end before we get to questions about, okay, so we have all of these things, we have issues. How are we going to make decisions and prioritize things moving forward? And this really is where the development of the strategic capital master plan is going to come into place. We are better positioned to make data-informed strategy decisions about capital investments. The strategic capital master plan looks at facility condition life cycle data to allow us to address issues earlier. Maintenance request data, we've woven this into building composite scores. It can help us focus where major investments should be made we might have a system that could be end of life, but it's running pretty well, and we're not, not getting any maintenance requests, and we might have a system that isn't quite there, but we have hundreds of maintenance requests. So that's the kind of data that can help us make the decision, but we might actually want to replace something else first. But having all of that data, and what I will say, and I'll just keep going. So we also have energy use, and we actually have lived experience data. We've surveyed our schools, we've surveyed our principals and our facility managers to say, like, what is the experience like, just to make sure we're including that viewpoint as well in this. And what I would say is part of the value of this, and really, in my mind, is as much the tools that are being created that we can use to plan year after year, because conditions are changing. We're doing our facility condition assessments, we're updating data, and so we're gonna be able to take a fresh view at this annually instead of looking at a static plan. I know we've said that many times, but this will be living and breathing, so we can make better informed decisions over time as conditions change. And the last thing I want to point out is the tools developed are also giving us a decision-making framework to help forecast evolving needs and to ensure that targeted capital investments support students now and in the future. I know that's an interest of the board, that we're making investments in facilities where our students are going to be. And the tool really provides a great framework to help us with that. So I just want to call that out, that we're really excited about this. We're really excited about what we think is just going to be a tool to allow us to, like I said, to make better decisions, to really bring the priorities to the surface and make sure that a lot of different data components are informing those decisions that we make. That's what I have. So happy to take questions or if you have comments.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, how often do staff grievances shift budget priorities? And how do they impact, where things move on the strategic plan?
Grievances themselves.
Yeah, like if there's a teacher grieving, like my classroom is, not functioning for me, and they bring it through a grievance, does that then increase response to that teacher's issue, or?
My experience has been, now I'll let Mark jump in if this isn't accurate through his lens.
Yeah.
I haven't been a part of an issue that's gone to the grievance level, as it relates to a heating, cooling, building condition. There have been, that idea's been floated. I'm not sure if it's gotten that far, and I don't know, Mark, if something has come across your desk that I missed, but as it relates to building conditions.
I think the grievance environment, more than anything, increases our sense of urgency and shines a light on things. The things that we are grieved for, typical classroom temperature is the big one that, statements you made that we're going to file a grievance or something like that. The interesting thing in that is it really doesn't change our course of action drastically because we are already doing literally everything that we can. So I hope that answers
Yeah.
that question.
It helps us, I'm trying to understand, from our staff's perspective, is this an effective way to get your
Yeah.
situation addressed?
Here's one example that we may have, if something is in fact rising to that level, and we are unable to address it in a timely manner, it may require us to bring in an outside contractor, for example, to expedite the repair, which at times comes at a cost, of course.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Mark, and I was gonna echo that sentiment of typically when things rise to that level, there's a fundamental problem that's broken. So we're engaged to fix it already, we're trying to fix it as quickly as we can, as efficiently as we can. Just because we know the impact it has. We know that when a school's hot, I've been in a classroom teaching particularly when the school is incredibly cold. It's hard. It has an impact. It's hard to be in front of 20, 30 kids and being your best and have them be their best. So the urgency's there. And I think that that's happening regardless. And maybe like what Mark said, maybe there's a contractor, we'll pull a contractor or something like that if needed, but we're trying to fix it as quickly as we can anyways.
I appreciate it,
Yeah.
I think it just adds context to some of the conversations conversations that we may end up having as we move out the community
Yep.
we talked about.
Yep.
That's my other question, clearly we're impacted, clearly our budget is far below what we need to invest in our capital needs. Do you have a sense, are we more impacted or similarly impacted with other districts that are comparable to us? We have a huge amount of inventory, I know, so there are small school districts that don't have nearly any amount of, property that they have to manage. But I'm just wondering, are we more impacted because of our size or because of the age of our buildings than other districts?
You know, honestly, I'm not sure the makeup of too many of our neighboring districts. I'd be happy to look at it and get back to you. I do think some of our neighboring districts have, stronger funding sources to support, capital. But, I think they've been pretty high level right now, and I'd be happy to dive into that with you.
Yeah. It's helpful as we move into the school year and we're getting ready to engage with groups like CASB, where we can talk with board members from other school districts who are facing similar problems. And if we're able to identify, the deep impact across the entire state, that takes what we're experiencing to a different level.
Yep.
Than it just being perceived by our local community as this is just an issue in Jeffco.
Yep.
Right?
And I know, Brennan has shown that bar chart of how much Jeffco gets, in mill levy override, and then also, comparing that to districts. There are other districts that have passed special purpose mills. So that level of detail is there too. So we know right there that those districts have that resource available to them to invest in these areas.
Any other questions for Jeff? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
Does everyone wanna take a 5-minute break? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, and then, based on how this is going, what I would like to suggest is that we then look at the polling. So Ryan, I know you're on, we'll get you in about 5 minutes, and then go right